It's holiday time in Germany, and everyone's traveling somewhere, including me. I left home 5 hours ago, and I'm heading along the A3, one of Germany's major Autobahns. It starts at the Dutch border in the west and heads across the country towards Italy, Croatia and Turkey. My first break is at a truck stop in Geiselwind, a small town in Bavaria. I've arrived at lunchtime. It's the busiest time of day for the restaurant. The kitchen is serving up to 150 meals per hour. There's no time to chat. The most popular item on the menu is the long-distance driver's special: vegetables, fried potatoes, and a generous serving of meat. It's got to be served fast. The guests are in a hurry. All of a sudden, the restaurant is packed. Tour buses stop here, and often several at the same time. When I ask, they tell me they've come from the northwest coast and are headed for the mountains in northern Italy.
Wo fahren Sie denn hin?
They're traveling right across Germany and then over the Alps. A bit of sustenance helps, but it has to be downed fast. I ask the waitress how long people spend here. 1/2 to 3/4 of an hour, she says. And then they're on their way again. I board a bus headed back home to Cologne. Most of those on board are elderly ladies, and I learn why. Do you get to make friends on a bus trip, I ask? This woman says yes. When you live alone and no longer have a partner, it's a lot of fun. But sadly, I have to leave. The driver's impatient to go. In the parking lot, Michael Sillich is waiting for me. He works for the breakdown service of the German Automobile Association, and he's taking me out on patrol. We've barely set off when he gets a call. A vehicle from the Netherlands has engine trouble. The first thing I do is put on a safety vest. Filming on the Autobahn is dangerous. Michael Sillich gets to work. Water's dripping out. A leak in the cooling system. If Michael Sillich can't fix it, the Dutch holidaymakers can forget driving on to Italy. He tells me he's not sure what's causing the leak. But the car can't be driven as is. Without water, the engine will seize up. You can see that it's wet, he says. We have to find out where it's coming from. But at first glance, nothing can be seen. Michael Sillich decides to take a test drive. I'll close the hood and we'll drive together to the next service area, he tells me. The holidaymakers are pinning their hopes on the serviceman. I ask them whether they're worried they might not make it to Italy. No, says the driver. The guy knows what he's doing. Michael Sillich now has a few more ideas about the problem. He tells me he thinks it's a hose or a pump that's leaking, and he's pretty sure he'll be able to fix it, so they can continue their journey. I get distracted by some extraordinary vehicles. The owners proudly show them off to me. This man tells me his is a K50 RL, built in 1976. He says he dreamt of having one when he was a kid, and finally got this bike 15 years ago. He explains they're members of a moped club in Duisburg in western Germany. This is the first time they've gone on a tour together. They plan to ride along the old Brenner Pass route, through the mountains to Italy. They've wanted to do a road trip together for ages, he tells me. But for now, their treasures stay on a trailer. Seems an odd kind of motorbike trip to me. In the meantime, Michael Sillich has bad news for the Dutch travelers. Unfortunately, it's not just a question of a new hose, he says. The pump's leaking, and that means the car has to go into the shop. It's not something that can be quickly done on the side of the road. They have to wait till Monday, he says. The Dutch are shocked and don't know what to do next. Sillich tells them he'll call a tow truck because the car can't be driven in this condition. You'll need the help of the Dutch Automobile Association, he says. The lady rings and asks whether they can provide a substitute car, but the answer's no, not for a 3-week holiday in Italy. I asked them whether they were looking forward to the trip. Yeah, of course, he says. He worked for a whole year, and one of their group was ill for a long time. So they're deeply disappointed. The Dutch holidaymakers aren't the only ones who are stuck. During the holiday season, trucks are banned from driving at the weekend. Some drivers enjoy the break. We'll go for a walk this afternoon, says this driver, and rest. I suggest it's good they get a weekend too. If my wife were here, he says. Udo Hoenicke is lucky. His wife is around. I ask about the beds, and she tells me her husband sleeps on the bottom and she sleeps on top. She explains it's a kid's bunk bed that you fold down when you need it. They have a TV too. I ask if she gets bored. No, she says. When the weather's good, they go on walks and look at the scenery. She gets to go places she'd otherwise never see. She likes that, she tells me. It's not boring. Then I meet someone else who's taking a break. I ask him where he's going. To Turkey, he says. I ask how long the journey will take. 2 days and a night, he explains, at least 40 hours. And there's not much room, as his daughter Sumera shows me. I ask whether she can sleep there. She says yes, and when I ask where her mother sits, she explains she has a tiny bit of room and her mother fits in beside her. It does look squashed. As well as provisions for the journey, the Savinas have lots of presents for their family in Turkey and their clothes. Mr. Savina shows me their suitcases. You don't have much room, do you? Then they squeeze back into the car for the next 2,000 kilometers. I set off again too, but not bound for some holiday resort. I'm headed back to the TV station in Berlin. Like almost all the travelers, I'll be relieved to get off the Autobahn. And then I find myself in the situation so familiar to everyone who's driving through Germany at holiday time. I get stuck in a traffic jam.